So before I replace the rear main seal and take the oil pump out and inspect it and then replace the oil pump cover O-ring, I'm going to clean up the bell housing and get all the garbage out of here. And while I was at it, I pulled the starter motor out and I can clean up this upper cavity as well. And I took out the oil rebreather hose and put a shop towel plug in there to keep any water and stuff from getting inside the engine. And what I typically do is start off with kerosene and a stiff paintbrush when I've got really hard deposits. And then I switch to the foamy engine cleaner and clean all out as much as I can. And then there's usually little hardened parts in the crevices of the casting. So I'll use a little carb cleaner and a toothbrush because there's often little deposits in here that you just can't get to. Now this may sound overly anal retentive, but the way I view things, since I'm about to go into the inside of the engine, I want to make sure everything is really, really clean because I don't want to get any garbage or debris inside the motor. So it's worth it to me to take the time to really clean this up and get rid of all the dirt and grime. So I just applied the foaming engine cleaner after I used some kerosene, and it's removing quite a lot of the grease and oil. So this is what things look like after a couple of applications of the foamy gunk engine cleaner and an initial application of the kerosene. So I'm going to get to work with a toothbrush and a brass brush and the carburetor cleaner. So here's what things look like after using the carb cleaner and a brass brush and a toothbrush and an occasional toothpick and Q-tip. And everything's looking much, much, much better. It's all nice and clean inside the bell housing. So I'm ready to start working on the rear main seal and the oil pump. So I'm ready to remove the rear main seal, and I'm going to use the CycleWorks tool for pulling the seal. And it attaches to the flywheel using 3 of the flywheel bolts. And then there's a couple of screws that penetrate the outside of the rear main seal so that you can pull it. And it uses a large puller bolt to pull the plate back and pull out the seal. Now this particular seal is got a very hard steel ring around it, and I couldn't actually put the screws in by hand. So what I did is I drilled a 7/16 hole, and then the screw can go in and it'll have enough grip to pull the seal out. So I had to make that change to get this seal to work with the puller. And then just to keep any of the drill chips from getting into the engine, I put a little bit of shop towel just to keep it from dropping in there. Now before I drilled the holes, I mounted the puller plate, and then I ran the screws in with my Phillips just as hard as I could to kind of put a dimple in the outside edge of the seal. And then I took the plate off so I could drill the holes so I could put the screws in. So after I got the screws in, I removed the bolts that were the flywheel bolts, and now I can run in the puller bolt and I can tighten that up with a crescent wrench, and I can pull the seal out of the engine block. So what happened is the screw pulled right out of the face of the seal because it's in here pretty tight. So what I'll do is rotate the plate and put it on, and then mark 2 new holes that I can drill, and then mount the plate on with the screws. And then before I pull it, I'm going to use my torch and heat up around the aluminum block here so that I can get it out. So after I tried the second time, the screw also pulled out even though I had heated the case. So what I resorted to next was a seal puller, and I very, very carefully made sure it was right in here, and I was able to pop the seal out, pulling around the edge. So that's another technique you can use. As you can see, this is all a steel band around the edge of the seal, and it's been sitting for 25 or 30 years, so it was really kind of stuck to the bore. But we've got it out now, so success. So I'm ready to install the new rear main seal, and the first thing I did is I cleaned up the bore with some wet dry 1000 grit paper, and I just lightly sanded the bore to get rid of any small bits of debris that might have been left from the old seal. Now this is the new seal, which is basically Teflon, and this is a ring that helps form the lip of the seal. Now on this seal, it's actually got rubber on the outside and not steel. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of oil on the edge of the seal, so when I push it in, it should slide in pretty easily. And I'll use the CycleWorks seal installing tool to put it in there. So I pulled the sleeve out and put a little oil around the perimeter. And now I'm going to place it in the bore and try to get it to go in evenly initially. And it's fighting me a little bit. Nope, still not quite straight. Let's try again. Okay, then I'll put the plate on from the CycleWorks tool using all 5 of the old flywheel bolts, and then I'll tighten them to pull the seal flush into the bore. So I have the 5 bolts installed, and I have a little 19mm socket, and I'm just going to walk my way around because I want to pull the seal in square. And you just keep going around, and I keep my eye on the edge of the seal to make sure it's going straight, and if one side needs a little extra just to straighten it out, I'll give an extra turn to that bolt. Okay, the bolts are all getting tight now, which means the seal is bottomed. So I'm just going to go around and make sure everybody's tight. Tight, 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 tight. And one more, just to be sure. Not a big force here, just making sure everybody's nice and snug. And that means the seal is seated. Okay, so just need to back the bolts out and we're all done. Okay, I've got the plate off and the seal is seated. I like to take a flashlight and just verify as I look at the edge of the seal that, and I feel it with my finger, but I want to be sure it's flush all the way around this edge, because if it's not, it may bump into the flywheel, and that means you get to do all the work all over again. But it's looking good, so I think we've got a new rear main seal installed.